Hello everyone, I'm Jack Fisher and welcome to my world. And I don't know about the rest of my audience, but I am ready for some football. It has been another long, arduous offseason, even with new leagues like the XFL and the USFL. But the wait is almost over. A new NFL season is upon us. And I am ready to embrace it with open arms and a full case of beer. This season promises to be even more eventful than most, because the NFL is going through a transition of sorts. Tom Brady, arguably the greatest player of all time, has finally retired. And Aaron Rodgers, also one of the best quarterbacks of our generation, is nearing the end of his career. But a new crop of dominant teams and all-pro players are emerging. And I am so excited to see where things trend from here. But before I start speculating on the 2023 season, I need to make a few quick notes. Back in 2021, I was both surprised and elated that I actually picked the eventual Super Bowl champions in the LA Rams. I honestly can't remember a time when a preseason prediction of mine was that accurate in any capacity. And I surely didn't expect to be as accurate in 2022, but damn it if my prediction skills didn't regress significantly. I really did think that the Buffalo Bills were going to win it all in 2022. I also thought that the Kansas City Chiefs were going to take a step back. I even went so far as to say the Denver Broncos and the Dallas Cowboys were dark horse Super Bowl contenders. It just goes to show you how unpredictable the NFL can be, as well as how flawed my predictions can be. I really didn't get much of anything right in 2022. But again, I've never claimed to be that perceptive when it comes to predicting sports. And despite my poor track record, I'm going to try it again. Like the last couple years, I'm going to go through every division, predict a division winner, predict the playoffs, and ultimately determine who will hoist the Lombardi Trophy in Super Bowl LVIII. However accurate or inaccurate my takes may be, I'm sharing them with all my fellow football fans as we await another NFL season. Enjoy. Before Tom Brady left the New England Patriots, the AFC East was the most lopsided division in all of football. You could usually assume that the Patriots were going to lock up the division, usually before Christmas. But even after Tom Brady left, the division still felt lopsided with the rise of the Buffalo Bills. And make no mistake, the Bills are still the team to beat in 2023. They've done plenty to earn that role, and they'll still contend for it. But towards the end of last season, there were some troubling signs in Buffalo. The fact they struggled so much to beat Miami in the wildcard round and against a backup quarterback in Skylar Thompson, no less, that was pretty telling. Then, getting blown out by Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals in the division round was an indication that the Bills' reign is vulnerable. And in the 2023 season, things promise to be even more difficult. Aaron Rodgers is now with the New York Jets. And the Jets actually showed some real fight last year, despite subpar quarterback play. Now they finally have some real talent on both sides of the ball. And even though Aaron Rodgers isn't what he was 5 years ago, he's still way better than Zach Wilson on his best day. And even with the constant injuries to Tua Tagovailoa, the Miami Dolphins made the playoffs last year. And they certainly have what it takes to make another playoff push this year. And oh yeah, Bill Belichick is still coaching the New England Patriots. They are still a threat. So, for the first time in 2 decades, the AFC East could be a really tight race. While the Buffalo Bills are still a playoff caliber team, the cracks really showed late last year. And in 2023, I think someone is going to break through. And that someone will be the New York Jets. Now, it's not to say Aaron Rodgers will make the Jets Super Bowl contenders, but I do think that, given the talent on that team, they will win the AFC East this year. Whether or not they actually make any headway in the playoffs, well, that's another story. The AFC North is another division that has become intensely competitive in recent years. It is no longer a two-horse race between the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Cincinnati Bengals now have a legit superstar in quarterback Joe Burrow. And even the Cleveland Browns have stocked up on talented skill players like Myles Garrett, Nick Chubb, and Deshaun Watson. Last year, I fully expected Pittsburgh to keep competing, despite the retirement of Ben Roethlisberger. But that turned out to be a flawed assumption, because I don't think Kenny Pickett did anything to prove that he can fill those shoes at quarterback. I also suspected Lamar Jackson to carry Baltimore, but he just could not stay healthy. And backup Tyler Huntley just couldn't do enough with the talent on that team. Over the course of the offseason, there has been more optimism that Lamar Jackson will return to his MVP caliber form. They've even gone out and signed numerous offensive weapons like Deshaun Jackson to improve the offense. They also finally managed to resolve a nasty contract dispute that was clearly a distraction all last season. But I am not convinced that Lamar Jackson can stay healthy for 17 games. I'm also not convinced that Joe Burrow can stay healthy for the Cincinnati Bengals. He already suffered a significant injury during training camp, and the Bengals really didn't do much to address the issues with the offensive line, in my opinion. As great as Joe Burrow has been, I think he's taking way too much punishment, and if he's not careful, he could go the way of Carson Palmer and so many other Bengals quarterbacks. Then there are the Cleveland Browns, a team that was once so easy to write off every season. But then they decided to swing big when they traded for Deshaun Watson from Houston. And keep in mind, this is after they made the playoffs and won a playoff game with Baker Mayfield at quarterback. Now, they're betting that Watson's off-the-field issues are behind him. And I admit, that is a risky bet. But just by judging the current talent on the roster, and how well each team has played as of late, I think this is the year the Cleveland Browns win the division. They were already quite competitive last year while Watson was serving his suspension. And I think they're a dark horse team in 2023 to do so much more. In the NFL, some divisions are hard to predict because every team are legit competitors. Other divisions are hard to predict because every team has serious flaws. And for the past several seasons, every team in the AFC South has been defined by their many flaws. For a brief while, it seemed like the Tennessee Titans were the team to beat. They had a top 5 defense and an offense that could ride Derrick Henry to multiple victories. But last year, the Titans took a step back. However, that didn't really matter all that much because the Texans and the Colts took a step back as well. As for the Jacksonville Jaguars, my dark horse team from 2022, well, they really couldn't take a step back. They were just that bad the year before. Even so, they still managed to win the division, albeit with only a 9-8 record. But they still feel like a team on the rise. They've got a franchise-caliber quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, they have a Super Bowl winning coach in Doug Peterson, but even within such a weak division, they didn't do too much. Repeating as division champs in 2023 won't be easy. The Houston Texans are finally getting out of the salary cap hell they've been in for the past several years. And the Titans still have a solid defense that can win them plenty of games. As for the Indianapolis Colts, well, they still haven't found a worthy successor to Andrew Luck. They are hoping that this year's first-round pick Anthony Richardson can be the guy. But if he's not, the rest of the team just doesn't have the tools to make up for it. While a lot can change over the course of a season, I still say the Jacksonville Jaguars are the most complete team. I think they'll win more than 9 games this year. But winning one of the weakest divisions in football may obscure just how much farther this team has to go to compete for a Super Bowl. But if nothing else, winning the division again will show that they're on the right track. I've been saying it for 4 straight seasons now, and I'll keep saying it until it stops being so accurate. Patrick Mahomes is awesome, and at this point, there's no denying it. The man has helped guide the Kansas City Chiefs to 3 Super Bowl appearances, winning 2 in the process. He's not even over 30 yet, and he's the best quarterback Kansas City has ever had. he may very well go on to become one of the greatest players to ever play this game. And now that Tom Brady has retired, Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL, and the Kansas City Chiefs are still an offensive powerhouse under coach Andy Reid. And as long as he and Mahomes remain at the helm, the Chiefs have the inside track to another AFC West title. And in 2023, it might even be easier than previous years. The Las Vegas Raiders were among the few teams who gave Kansas City problems last year. But that team collapsed on itself, both on and off the field. Now that they've shipped Derek Carr off in favor of the oft-injured Jimmy Garoppolo, I think the odds of the Raiders competing with the Chiefs are poor at best. Now, this all still assumes that the LA Chargers remain stuck where they are, unable to put more pieces around quarterback Justin Herbert. It also assumes that Sean Payton won't be able to fix the Denver Broncos after such a disastrous season under Nathaniel Hackett. Assumptions like that are always dangerous in the NFL. And that's coming from someone who actually thought the Broncos would win the division in 2022. I know, that was a pretty gross assumption on my part. Now, I admit, I could be wrong in many of my assumptions, but I'm not convinced that Nathaniel Hackett was entirely the problem in Denver, nor am I convinced that the Chargers have improved enough to catch up to the Chiefs. All that could change over the course of the 2023 season, but for the moment, I think the gap between the Chiefs and every other team in the division is just too vast. And so long as Patrick Mahomes keeps being Patrick Mahomes, the AFC West is the Chiefs' domain. Once again, the NFC East, the most consistently inconsistent division in football, surprised me last year. The Philadelphia Eagles emerged as the top dog in the entire NFC, despite being in a division that's never stable or predictable. And, on paper, they're still this division's most talented team. But having a great team on paper rarely amounts to much in the NFL, and that doubly applies to the NFC East. The New York Giants really came into their own last season under coach Brian Daboll. And the Dallas Cowboys, despite their erratic tendencies, showed real growth with Dak Prescott as their quarterback. And even when Prescott got injured, the Cowboys proved they could win with the likes of Cooper Rush at quarterback. But, once again, they underachieved at the worst possible time. And as for Washington, they're actually the real wild card in the division this year. They could either win 11 games or they could win just 2 and gain a top 5 draft pick in 2024. With a recent change in ownership, there's real optimism that Washington could become a competent team for the first time in 2 decades. But at the moment, I think it's much more likely that coach Ron Rivera gets fired near the end of the season once the team starts slowly again. I also think it's likely that the Eagles will take a step back. Because when they lost at home on Monday Night Football against Washington last year, that was a bad sign. And when they breezed through the 49ers in the NFC Championship game after Brock Purdy got injured in the first quarter, that was another. Now, that's not to say I think the Giants or the Cowboys will catch up, but I do think it'll be a lot tighter this year. Remember, the NFC East hasn't had a repeat division winner in over 20 years. So, taking all that into consideration, I believe that streak will end in 2023 with the Eagles, albeit not by much. Every year in the NFL, it seems like there's one particular division that's the most exciting in all of football. And for the 2023 season, I think the NFC North will be that division. Much like the AFC East, it's no longer dominated by one team with one Hall of Fame quarterback. Aaron Rodgers has left the Green Bay Packers, and nobody seems convinced that Jordan Love can fill his shoes. But unlike the AFC East, every other team in this division are legitimate contenders. The Detroit Lions, yeah, those Detroit Lions, have become off-season favorites and for good reason. They proved in 2022 that they aren't pushovers anymore. Coach Dan Campbell has the Lions believing that they can rise above their status as a perpetually snake-bit franchise. And while I'm not convinced the Lions will make that big leap in 2023, I do believe they have what it takes to win the division. But so do the Minnesota Vikings, who've been a playoff caliber team for years now. And once again, they really struck gold in the draft with Justin Jefferson, who I believe is the best receiver the Vikings have had since Randy Moss. But the team that intrigues me the most is the Chicago Bears. I honestly wasn't sold on Justin Fields last year when the season began. But watching him play convinced me that he is a special talent. And the Bears made sure to surround him with new offensive weapons in the offseason. That means Fields won't have to carry the entire offense, and the defense won't be forced to keep games close quite as often. Granted, a lot of this depends on whether Justin Fields can take a step forward this season, something running quarterbacks really do after their rookie year. Just see what happened to RG3 in Washington. But in a division where the Packers are full of uncertainty, the window is now open. I really do think the NFC North will deliver at least one wildcard team this year. But as for who wins the division, I think the Bears will come out on top. If Justin Fields can be just as good as he was last year and on a consistent basis, they'll come out ahead. It'll still be close. I do think the Lions and the Vikings could win too. But at least for 2023, I predict the Bears will carry this division. Much like their AFC counterpart, the NFC South has a glut of teams that are either rebuilding or mired in mediocrity. Once Tom Brady chose to retire, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were suddenly exposed. They may think that Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask can carry the team, but let's face facts. Neither of those quarterbacks are in the same hemisphere as Tom Brady. But even with Brady at the helm, the Bucs faltered heavily in the latter part of the 2022 season. That being said, Tampa is still in a good position to repeat as division champs, mostly because the rest of the division is comparatively weak. The Carolina Panthers are still very raw, having just drafted a new quarterback in Bryce Young. And the Atlanta Falcons still have not filled the hole left at quarterback by the departure of Matt Ryan. And personally, I saw enough of Desmond Ridder in 2022 to surmise that he is not the answer. That leaves the New Orleans Saints, who made the biggest splash in the offseason by trading for Derek Carr from the Las Vegas Raiders. And I think this might go down as one of the most impactful moves of 2023. Because the Saints were a solid team in 2022. They just couldn't get any stability at quarterback. And Derek Carr is a good, stable quarterback. He was just on a very unstable team with the Raiders. It feels like that the Saints and Carr are an ideal match. They have talent on both sides of the ball. And without Tom Brady, the division is much weaker and completely up for grabs. It still won't be easy. I think the Bucs will still compete strongly for a title. But in the end, I believe Derek Carr will carry the Saints just enough to win the NFC South. Since 2019, the San Francisco 49ers have consistently surprised the league by winning when it counts. Under coach Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers have made deep playoff pushes on multiple occasions, including a trip to the Super Bowl, which they ultimately lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. But what makes this all the more remarkable is that the team has found ways to do this with multiple quarterbacks. I don't think anyone believed that the 49ers would go on a lengthy win streak with Brock frickin' Purdy, a 7th round draft pick who most probably thought would end up on a practice squad. But the 49ers kept finding ways to win. And it's not like the division is full of trash teams. The LA Rams won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. And the Seattle Seahawks surprised everyone in 2022 with quarterback Geno Smith having his best year. Now, the Rams aren't the team they were in 2021. Quarterback Matthew Stafford is getting up there in terms of years and hits. And Aaron Donald just couldn't stay healthy enough to make a difference in 2022. But the team still has plenty of talent. And the Seattle Seahawks have always given their division rivals a hard time, regardless of their respective records. As for the Arizona Cardinals, well, that's a team most agree is set to tank the 2023 season. A lot has gone wrong for them, both on and off the field. and I think they're much more likely to compete for the first overall pick in the 2024 draft than a division title. But even with the 49ers making it to the NFC Championship game last season, their deficiencies really did show against the Eagles. And now that teams have tape on Brock Purdy, I don't see him or the 49ers sneaking up on anyone in 2023. It's still likely that the 49ers will be in contention for the division this year. Their defense always keeps them in the hunt. But I think they'll come up short in 2023. And the Seattle Seahawks will pull a series of upsets that will ultimately win them the NFC West. They're already a team on the rise, and I think they'll rise just enough to surpass the 49ers, at least for this season. However the 2023 NFL season unfolds, the playoffs are going to be strange without Tom Brady. He's been such a constant in the NFL, it's kind of hard to imagine any postseason without him. But it's also exciting in that the window is now open for new superstars to emerge. Every NFL season seems to have a few players that become breakout stars. And every NFL postseason has a few stars that really shine on the biggest stage. I don't claim to know who those stars will be in the 2023 playoffs, but I think we'll see some familiar names that make their presence felt. So long as Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen remain healthy, the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills will be the class of the AFC. And as long as Jalen Hurts stay healthy, the Philadelphia Eagles will be the top team in the NFC. But I believe this is likely the year that teams like the Cincinnati Bengals and the San Francisco 49ers take a step back. It'll also be the year when a surprise team like the Seattle Seahawks or even the Denver Broncos have a late season surge. History tells us that there will be some playoff teams from previous years that will fall hard, and that same history also says that certain teams that nobody expects will emerge and become competitive. This year, I don't see the Chiefs falling too far from their current status. I think they'll make it to the AFC Championship game yet again. But they'll end up facing someone other than the Cincinnati Bengals this time. And regardless of whether it's the Buffalo Bills, the Jacksonville Jaguars, or the Cleveland Browns, I think they'll make it back to the Super Bowl as well. Things in the NFC might be a bit trickier to predict. I do think the Eagles will make a solid push to get back to the Super Bowl. But this year, I believe they'll fall short. But it won't be against a team like the 49ers. I believe that the Chicago Bears will emerge from a tough division and shock everyone in the playoffs. Justin Fields might even be an MVP candidate by the time they play their first postseason game. And with the offensive weapons he now has at his disposal, I think the Bears will fight their way into Super Bowl LVIII for a showdown with the Chiefs. Am I assuming a lot about the Bears taking a big leap this season? Yeah, I definitely am. But I think the time is right for a team like them to take the league by storm and set the stage for a unique Super Bowl matchup. After an NFL season defined by transitions and upheavals, I think it's fitting on some levels that we see some familiar faces and figures in Super Bowl LVIII. With Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs have become an offensive powerhouse that opposing defenses have yet to resolve. And with the NFL rules skewed so heavily towards offense and protecting superstar quarterbacks, I think it'll be a while before anyone catches up. The Chiefs will come into Super Bowl LVIII as heavy favorites, and the Chicago Bears will come in fired up and eager to strike back at this emerging dynasty. They'll have the defensive talent. They'll have a dynamic offense under Justin Fields. In the early parts of the game, I think the Bears will seek to control the clock and force turnovers, possibly even taking an early lead. But the Chiefs will make halftime adjustments, as they often do with Andy Reid. And those adjustments will be effective, as they've often been during his tenure. The Bears may put up a worthy fight, getting a few sacks and forcing a few more turnovers, but in the end, I don't think it'll be enough to stop the Chiefs from claiming their third Super Bowl title in 5 years, with a final score of 35-23. They are just too complete a team, and at the moment, even the best of the NFC isn't capable of keeping up. Until that changes, the Chiefs have the best chance to once again lift the Lombardi Trophy when all is said and done. And given their consistent dominance over the past 5 seasons, it might not even be the last. Every new NFL season brings with it a special kind of excitement. And unless you're a football fan, it really is hard to put that excitement into words. I felt it every year since I was a kid, watching NFL games with my dad and my brother. I still feel it all these years later, even as the league has grown and evolved. Like many seasons before it, I am so excited for what the 2023 NFL season will bring. Sure, I can make all the predictions I want. I can even assume that most of those predictions will be dead wrong, as will likely be the case this time around. But I'm still going to enjoy it every step of the way. Right now, the NFL is in the midst of another emerging dynasty. The Kansas City Chiefs have taken over for the New England Patriots as the team that always finds itself playing for a championship. And other teams are going through major transitions, some due to moving on from big-name players, and others due to upheavals with coaches and ownership. And with every year, the hype around a certain team fails, the ball bounces a certain way in big moments, and controversial calls will frustrate and enrage many. Nobody truly knows what will happen in 2023. Whatever form it takes, we'll begin to find out soon enough. And I am so ready. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for joining me in my world. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and until next time, take care and stay safe.